You've come for some legal tea. Let's get into it. I'm not a lawyer. I have no law degrees or certifications. This is all commentary, observation, speculation, and I have never seen the series Baby Reindeer, but that's what we're going to be talking about here and the defamation lawsuit around it. We're also going to be talking a lot about the Piers Morgan interviews. So we're going to start with the law stuff, get into the Piers Morgan stuff. So first of all, let's talk about what Baby Reindeer itself is. It's a docuseries on Netflix that details a stalking, harassing situation. The lead character is played by the man who lived out, this is his story, Richard Gadd, and his character name is Donnie. And he gets a stalker. This woman starts stalking and harassing, becoming massively obsessed with him, and becomes more and more abusive, committing all the way up to the ultimate SA crimes, and was so easily identifiable that she came out, and the real life person is Fiona Harvey. The in-character name is Martha Scott. Fiona Harvey, the real life woman, is suing Netflix for defamation, saying that the character that is supposed to be her is doing all kinds of terrible things that are not true. The lawsuit is for 170 million US dollars, and she says that it's defamatory, and the lawsuit is crazy. Okay, it's crazy because both Fiona Harvey and Netflix, now it's interesting, she's not suing Richard Gadd, she's specifically suing Netflix. So that's an interesting thing in and of itself. But she and Netflix are playing both sides of the coin. They both are saying that the allegations are true and untrue, and thus are and are not defamatory. Depending on who they are. Netflix is trying to say, no, this is a true story. Yes, these are negative, bad things about this person who apparently is identified. We tried to obscure her as much as we could, but these are things that happened. We can't defame her. These are true things. But we fictionalized a lot of the stuff, and so it's just a work of fiction. It's a work of art. We can do what we want. Okay, Netflix, so is it a true story or is it a work of fiction? The very first scene, the very first thing you see in the docuseries, which is a clip I had to look up, is this is a true story. If this is a true story, but some of these really bad things, like SA and the R word didn't happen, then that's not true and that is defamatory. Fiona Harvey's doing the exact same thing. She's saying that these things are fake, they're lies, they never happened. The whole thing is a giant lie. She never did any of those things. She was never convicted. She never committed any of those things. She's not a stalker or any of that stuff. And that it's all fake. Well, if it's all fake and it's a better story, then if it's fictionalized, then it's not defamation. And if it did happen, then it's not defamation. Courts agreed enough to give her a chance. The anti-SLAPP motion was denied. Anti-SLAPP because she is suing in California. Anti-SLAPP means you don't get to make discovery. Like, no, this is too ridiculous of a claim. We're not even going to let you get evidence to create a case. That's what anti-SLAPP is. It's a defamation case. One side, Fiona Harvey, saying that these things aren't true and they're ruining her life. The other side is Netflix saying this man, Richard Gadd, has a right to tell his true story about the things that happened to him. And even though we did sensationalize a few things, we obscured the person, and it's not our fault that the interneted. So that leads us to the Piers Morgan interview with Fiona Harvey. So Fiona Harvey, again, is the real life person represented by Jessica Gunning in Baby Reindeer as Martha Scott, who is the stalker in the series. And so I have several notes just everywhere from the interview. Things that the death threats, the internet finding her, the interneted, and that there was enough relatable information. And Richard Gadd himself said that he used some real life tweets and things from Fiona Harvey in the show. And that people were able to track her down, and that it's just been a horrendous, her exact word, experience, and so she had to come forward. She's doing this interview to tell her truth. So first we have the usual, kind of questions of, do you know Richard Gere? And she was like, I don't really know him. I only met him a few times, like 2 or 3 times. And how did she ever see the series? She says she never seen the series. Now, I have never seen the series. So this is where I start having some conflictions with her pretty immediately, because she says that it came to her attention years ago because she saw Richard Gere holding up a placard that resembled her or something before the series came out. And again, she's never seen the series, and she suspected that it was her, even though it couldn't have been her because she only met him 2 or 3 times. Okay, what? Very shortly into the interview, brings up the R word scene in a canal. I had to go look that up because I had no idea what she was talking about. And there is a scene of a full-on sensual, non-consenting attack that happens, and she just comes out with it. She's not prompted. Pierce doesn't ask about it. She says it herself, and she's like, she just immediately, like, that canal scene, that never happened. And it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. If you say you never saw the series, how do you know that it was you? How are you like, that's supposed to be me if you never seen the series? And 2, I mean, other than people like coming out and claiming it, how does she know how to rebuke that stuff if she never saw any of it? And 2, unprompted, she's able to say a scene that comes up later on in the series. Like, it's not something that happens quickly. So for someone who's never seen it, she brings up a very specific scene later in the series. I think that's weird. And when he asks her about her relationship with him, she was like, no, I never did anything with him. I'm pretty sure he's a homosexual. Again, really unprompted. She does this a lot in the interview, where she does a lot of cutting remarks, insults, and stuff to many people, including, later on, we'll get to this, Pierce himself. So Pierce Morgan continues to ask her some questions about the specifics, like, did you ever heckle him in a show aggressively or abusively? She goes, no. Have you ever been to one of his shows? And she goes, and she changes her story a lot too, because she goes, no, well, maybe one. Okay. And she was like, but no, I never heckled him. Okay, you never heckled him. And he goes, do you heckle at other comedy shows? And she goes, I don't really go to comedy shows. It's not my thing. So that's a little bit of a red flag to me. She did something out of the ordinary for her personal taste to Gad. She mentioned some other scenes too that I had to keep looking up when they were brought up. He asks her some other things, like the name of the show, which I didn't know because, again, I didn't see this. There's a scene in the show where she tells him that he looks like a toy reindeer that she had when she was a child, that he resembled the toy. And when that was asked about, she's like, well, yeah, I had a baby reindeer but I mentioned it to him, like, at the bar. Like, I saw him at a bar. So you did go to his bar. And she immediately goes, I don't drink alcohol. I was a bartender for 7 years, okay? And I have been a bartender attendee for much longer than that. And I do not casual chit-chat first time, even the 4th time, 5th time with a bartender, just casually bring up my childhood toys and tender things like that to the bartender. Nor has anyone ever done that to me. So she gets really, really consistently offended about being compared to the actress playing Martha, which Martha Scott is the fictional character who Fiona Harvey says is supposed to be her. To her, she's like, I don't think I really look like her. I don't think her mannerisms are me. I don't think anything about her. She doesn't even sound like me. Okay, so if you don't think she sounds like you, that this actress's portrayal of you is not you whatsoever, how did you determine that other people were able to use the mannerisms and behaviors, etc., of the character to you? At his house, that she never had his address to even do that. And she also keeps referring over and over and over to specific jail sentence scenes, which I again had to go look up on my own. I've never been to jail. Like that, the whole judge sentencing scene. And she also claims that she came across finding out about those things while looking up the weather. She continues to refute claims that she never contacted his parents, that she never knew his parents, that she was never went to jail, she was never arrested, she was never twice convicted for anything. And again, she gets very mad when Pierce Morgan shows a clip from an interview with Richard Gadd and Jessica Gunning, and she immediately goes, she doesn't even sound Scottish there. And Pierce has to point out to her, well, Jessica Gunning is an actress and she's putting on an accent for the characters. Again, you get a bigger fine, and you know, it takes a long time. It takes a lot to actually go to jail, and many people don't go to jail. And it's a very odd thing to point out. And she specifically also, Pierce Morgan pokes into and finds out that she's changed her name. She really tries to like blow it off, kind of muddles through it a little bit, but she has changed her last name. So then he continues to ask her, so you don't have a police record? No, you don't have any convictions, you don't have any of these things. And she goes, no. Fiona was headhunted by this other lawyer to work at her firm. She claims, again, she does these cutting remarks. She says that the lawyer who hired her didn't even know the name of her own firm, that she didn't work there for very long, and that no, she wasn't fired, she walked out. She walked is what she specifically says. Because again, she goes on to say that she only talked with him a few times, just bar banter. And there is another thing that she brings up about hanging the curtains being a reference to physical intimacy. And she was like, no, I never did any of that stuff. Pierce hits on that. He goes, you know, Richard Gatt has said that there were times where Richard led Harvey on, and Fiona Harvey goes, well, I brushed him off when he asked me to sleep with him. The emails, the phone calls, and the voicemails. And she goes, no, the only way he could have any voice messages from me is if he recorded me at the Holy Bar. How many times were you at the Holy Arms Bar? How many times were you at his bar where he was bartending, where he could gather, let me double check my number, 350 voicemails? At first she's like, oh, I highly doubt that. What do you mean you highly doubt that? And she's like, well, I never called him. I never had his number. Well, he says that he has voice messages. And she's like, well, he could have recorded me at the bar. Okay, a recording of you at the bar and a voicemail from you on his phone are not the same. Pierce brings up to her, he's like, so are you challenging Gadd to bring these out? Because, you know, it has your voice on it. People are going to know what you sound like exactly since you're here. And it's going to come out. They can trace your phone number. And so you know that that's provable. And she's like, yeah, but I highly doubt it. No, I don't have any. He probably recorded me at the Holy Arms, and that's not my fault. Which then she leads into another scene specific thing where she goes, and I never lunged at him from across the bar or attacked him at the bar. Which again, Pierce didn't bring up. She just says directly. She really wants to make it clear that she did not physically attack him in very specific scenes from a show she claims to have never seen, never sent, and she never called him. Or maybe she might have called him once. Maybe she sent him one email, not 41,000. That's crazy. That's a lot of emails. She's like, do you know how many emails that is in a day? It's a lot. No. We know that sending somebody 41,000 emails is a lot. So you're calling Netflix liars. She goes, no, I never said that word. And then they have this constant back and forth about whether she said it or not. So then she eventually is like, well, even if it's true, what, you did it again. And then it comes to that she has written 105 letters, and she goes, no, I never wrote him in. Well, maybe once. So we're doing that thing again. Well, maybe there was one voicemail. Well, I mean, I never had his number, so I didn't call him. So when he asked her about emails, he says that she has 6 different emails. Well, maybe it was 4 to 6. And he asks her, is it 4 or 6? And she was like, I can't remember. I think it was 6, though. And she claims that she has to have that. It's for organization. She has one for utilities, one for friends, one for family, etc. It's easier to have it that way. And she does this belittling thing to Pierce when he points out that having 6 emails is unusual. Because I don't know many people who have 6 emails. And she goes, well, then you don't know many people. Did you just tell Piers Morgan that he doesn't know many people? And she goes, I also have 4 phones. What do you mean you have 4 phones? Well, again, I like to keep people separate. I've heard of people having 2 phones, like a work phone and a personal phone. I've heard of that. I have never heard of people having 4 personal phones specifically for their bills and for friends and for family as she tries to divvy it up. And it's like, are you sure you don't have 4 phones and 4 phone numbers and 6 emails because some of them get blocked? Where she kind of laughs while going, I know I kind of sound like a maniac or a stalker or something. And it's like, yeah, you do. How self-aware. So we move towards the end of the interview, and he goes, do you think 41,000 emails is excessive? And she goes, yeah. And he goes, do you think that's stalking? And she goes, well, yes and no. And she goes, well, it just depends on the circumstance. Like, what if they're a wife and a husband and she tells about the kid? And then she goes, or if they've been friends for a long time, like 50 years or something. That's a bit of an extreme example. Then Pierce asks if her and Gad were friends. And she's like, no, I only met him 5 or 6 times. Now, before it was she met him 3 or 4 times. Now she's met him 5 or 6 times. And she just keeps going, saying they just want to make all this money. They're trying to milk it, with these untrue facts. That's the phrase she says. And she goes that they're making money off of her misery and these defamatory statements that are not true. She never went to jail. She didn't contact or stalk him. Challenging Gad to bring forward, because the evidence is going to come forward. He has the emails. He has all these things. And she goes, I'm challenging him to leave me alone. Well, he didn't contact her. There was one tweet where he told people, please don't try to find these people. I just wanted to share my story. I tried to obscure details as best I could, but other people pointed out, again, that she hated. Pierce says, well, I can see the similarities between you. And she's like, well, that's not very flattering. He goes, well, it's not a thing about flattery. I'm just telling you an observation. And she ends with going, I just want to be left alone, and I don't think they should be allowed to get away with saying all these lies. Crazy. That was a lot. I know that was a lot to take in. Tell me what your opinions are. Have you seen Baby Reindeer? I know the reviews are good. What did you think of the Piers Morgan interviews? And I will see you guys in the next one.